das der Bogen samt die Alsterland, so in Duster mit so'm fitten Mond entschied. Wenn die Wellenplätzer leise an dem Strand entlang, jeder Ex-Hamburger findet das doch so viel.
Here we have two World War I era German Zeppelin airships by Takom, the Q-class and the P-class. Imperial Germany, thinking that Zeppelins were the future of aerial combat, invested into their production and use. Unfortunately, nearly every Zeppelin story ends with a fireball, so the idea was eventually abandoned. One of the major problems with the Zeppelins was that it seemed that innocent civilians suffered more due to their use. After a series of bombing raids that caused civilian casualties in Britain earlier that year in 1916, the Germans sent a P-class Zeppelin, the LZ-77, into battle on a recon mission, and was quickly shot down over Verdun by anti-air fire. A British paper mocked the Germans, the title reading, "What Happens to a Zeppelin in Real War?", featuring the wreckage of LZ-77, which made the mistake of going out to scout instead of to kill innocent civilians. With this being the first time a Zeppelin was used in battle, it was a major embarrassment to the Germans, as it seemed the Zeppelins were only good for attacking unprotected targets. There's one Zeppelin in particular with a very interesting story. The LZ-59, also called the L20, was a Zeppelin Q class. This airship participated in the first ever Zeppelin attack on Britain on the night of January 31st, 1916. Due to the nature of these Zeppelin attacks, most of the eyewitness accounts are by civilians and non-combatants, as you'll soon hear. Jessie Harrison was a little girl living in a cottage with her parents in Osworth. Waking up in the middle of the night and hearing an odd sound, she looked outside to see what was going on. Looking out of the window and holding a candle, she saw a massive white cigar floating through the midnight sky. She was so shocked and surprised that she had accidentally set the curtains on fire with the candle while watching the Zeppelin fly past. The target was a Bennerley Viaduct, or train bridge, at Osworth. L-20 dropped 7 bombs in the viaduct, mostly missing, but causing shrapnel marks which are still visible on the viaduct today. The bombing did cause 2 casualties, however, 2 men and 1 cow. After the bombing raid was over and the curtain was put out, Jessie's dad William Harrison went to inspect the damage. Recovering some shrapnel from the exploded bomb which landed by the viaduct, he brought it to the local blacksmith and had a souvenir made, his very own German iron cross. He kept it in his pocket watch chain. When L-20 went off for another mission, it was blown off course and carried northward. Faced with ditching or being carried even further north, the crew opted to ditch in neutral Norway. Attempting to land in high winds, the captain Franz Staubert, seeing a house in the way at the last moment, redirected the airship to crash into the sea in Gansfjorden near Stavanger. As the nose hit the water, Staubert and 7 of the crew jumped into the water, and were rescued by a nearby fishing boat. The Zeppelin, carrying on, was just about to barely pass a hill, but the rear gondola slammed into a boulder, falling and killing 3 of the 4 sailors. Flying now towards Hafrsfjorden southwest of Stavanger, the airship crashed into the sea on the banks of Josund and broke in 2. The sailors who had jumped out into the sea were rescued by a Norwegian torpedo boat. Now, of course, it's not every day that a Zeppelin flies over your town and crashes into the sea, so the entire village came to check out the wreck. It stayed there for the entire day, and people were given work off just to go see the wreck of the L-20. By the next day, the wreck had drifted over to the north side of the fjord by Sørsunda, where the engine and machine gun fell into the sea. Free of more weight, the airship was on the brink of rising again and crashing into the nearby houses. Norwegian Colonel Johannessen, seeing this, ordered some soldiers to shoot the airship and explode the hydrogen inside. The explosion proved more powerful than they expected, and a giant fireball was thrown into the air, lighting several nearby boathouses on fire. The concussive explosion threw the soldiers onto their backs, and blew out all the windows within 300 meters. The crew were taken prisoner, with some being held until the end of the war, and others being released shortly after their capture. Bronstabert managed to escape internment, and failing to learn his lesson, he went right back to flying Zeppelins, where he eventually died in 1917 when his Zeppelin exploded over France. These kits are available at MRS Hobby Shop in Salt Lake City or Sandy, Utah, or on kitlings.com.
Hannes, du paddelst mit mir immer so, und wie du mit deinem Paddelhaus. Hannes, zuckersüßer Hannes, du kannst das wirklich ganz famos. Du stippst dein Paddel mit dem Schwung so rein. Hannes, darin